What is up, everybody? Welcome back for another Let's Play, in this case, Crusader Kings 2, a Game of Thrones mod. This is the latest and the final version of a Game of Thrones mod for CK2. You might be asking yourself, why am I playing CK2 in October of 2023 when there's Crusader Kings 3 and, no less, Crusader Kings 3, a Game of Thrones mod? So here's the reason, it's couple-fold. So I've probably played like 600 hours of Crusader Kings 2. Probably another 100 hours of a Game of Thrones mod for CK2. So I'm very familiar with the game mechanics and everything. So that's number one. Even though it's been a while since I played Crusader Kings 2. Number two, this is the final version of both the vanilla versions of Crusader Kings 2, including the DLCs, and the Game of Thrones mod for CK2. So like, this is the final product. Whereas with Game of Thrones for CK3, obviously there's going to be more iterations to that as they refine the overhaul mod and also address any new DLCs that CK3 introduces into the community. So that's still an evolving product. And so I felt like the release of Game of Thrones for CK3 was a good opportunity to kind of revisit CK2, the Game of Thrones mod, play that, have fun with it before I turn the page probably forever to CK3 and not go back. So that's kind of what I've decided to do. Here are the DLCs that we are playing with. We are playing with the Swords of Islam, Legacy of Rome, the Republic, the Old Gods, Charlemagne, Ways of Life, Horse Lords, Conclave, the Reaper's Due, Monks and Mystics, Jade Dragon, and Holy Fury. And we will be playing as House Dayne, which is located down in Western Dorne, as Gerold the Darkstar, which we will go over with here shortly. So here's the Torrentine, which is the High Lordship under Dorne, the far western flank of the Dorne lands. There's only 3 High Lords in House Dorne. There are the Torrentines, the Danes, the Fowlers, and the, was it Yornwood? I think it's how you pronounce it. Which they got a lot of territory. So if we could ally ourselves with them, then that'd be a big deal. Gerold starts up here in High Hermitage, and he falls under the High Lordship of, I believe, his nephew. Who's this right here? So our first order of business will be to overthrow him and become High Lord of the Torrentine, which will give us these 3 areas here. We do not have the best castle. It's like a level 1 castle. The Starfall has a level 3 castle. And then what we really want is the Skyreach, which has actually a level 4 castle. So that's a pretty big castle. Produces a lot of troops. As you note, one of the first things to note here is that we're in 8296, which is actually 3 years before the Clash of Kings scenario. The reason I did that is just to add a different flavor to the game, make it a little bit more unpredictable. I think it's pretty predictable in the Clash of Kings what happens in those first 6 months or a year. I've played the Clash of Kings a couple times, and it seems like the results typically the same. So this will add a lot more variety to it. Who knows? Maybe King Robert doesn't die soon. I mean, he is a drunkard and he's fat and all that stuff. But and if he does die, is Joffrey able to hold the realm together? Maybe he is, maybe he isn't. I don't know. But this just gives it a little bit different predictability, or unpredictability rather, in terms of how the gameplay is going to go. I also turned off the White Walkers just because I want to make this more of a kind of a CK2 type game. So the White Walkers won't be a factor. I turned down the de jure, what's it called? The shift, I guess you'd say. So basically, if you conquer a territory and you hold it for 50 years, then it becomes, basically de jure Dorne. The reason I did that is I felt like 100 years was too long, and you have to think about it, particularly in the Middle Ages. People didn't live to be 80 or 90 years old normally, right? Like normally like 50 or 60, if that, right, was really old. And you imagine if you were a young child and then someone came in and conquered your lands and then they ruled over you for 50 or 60 years, you wouldn't be like, yeah, back in my day when I was like 3, so-and-so ruled these lands, so therefore they're the rightful owner. You'd be like, no, like this other dude ruled me the entire life. I kind of see them as my lord. So I think 50 years is appropriate. And yeah, so now before I get into kind of the overall strategy of the game and kind of how we're going to play it, let's go into the history of House Dayne, and then we'll pivot over to the history of Gerold Darkstar from the books, and then we'll come back and I'll describe briefly kind of what the plan is for our playthrough, and then in the next video, after I have gone through and taken care of all this stuff, our ambitions, our marriage, our court, all that fun stuff, I'll go over that very briefly in the next video, and then we'll actually get started with the playthrough. House Dayne of Starfall is a noble house from Starfall in Dorne. They are among the principal houses sworn to House Martell. The Sword of the Morning is a title given to a Dane knight who is considered worthy of wielding the great sword Dawn, a blade said to be created from the heart of a falling star. Their blazon is a white sword and a falling star crossing on a lavender background. They are a cadet branch of the family that are Danes of High Hermitage. All right. Now, the Danes who originate in the western Red Mountains would be considered stony Dornishmen by Daeron II Targaryen. Their hair has been described as pale blonde, dark, and silver with a streak of black, which will be Gerold, who we're playing as. Danes have been observed with dark blue eyes or purple eyes. The purple eyes do not necessarily indicate Valyrian descent. History. Kings of the Torrentine. House Dayne is one of the most ancient houses in the Seven Kingdoms, claiming first men ancestry, dating back 10,000 years to the dawn of days. Now, in Westeros, that's a big deal. If you can show ancestry back to the first men, that's like saying you're, a Native American of America, right? It's like, you were here first. You've been here a very long time. Therefore, you have a claim to whatever it is you're asserting. The first Dane is said to have raised Starfall on an island at the mouth of the Torrentine, having tracked a falling star there and found a stone of magical powers. His descendants became kings of the Torrentine and lords of Starfall. Along with the Fowlers and the Yonwoods, the Danes were among the most powerful and prestigious houses of ancient Dorne. The Danes are also famed for Dawn, their ancestral sword made from the falling star, and the men who wield it, known as the Swords of the Morning. The Danes have taken part in many conflicts between Dorne and the Reach, including the battles against House Oakheart, which, if you know anything about Dane history, you will know that there's a lot of bad blood between the Oakhearts and the Danes. Lots of killing each other. We're going to replicate that in our game, hopefully. We're going to make the Oakhearts rivals. King Samwell Dane, called the Starfire, once burned Old Town. The last Dane king, Vorian, known as the Sword of the Evening, was defeated in the Nymerian War and sent to the Wall. Afterwards, the Danes supported Nymeria against King Yorick of Yornwood. Nymeria's third husband was Sir Davos Dayne, the Sword of the Morning. Nymeria, Princess of Dorne, was later succeeded by her eldest daughter from her first husband, Mors Martell, not by her son Davos. And this is where you see the split from ruling Dorne by the Danes and instead of pivoting over to the Martells. Now, I don't know what the reasoning was behind that, but there you have it. The Targaryen era. So in 10 AC, during the First Dornish War, Sir Joffrey Dayne led a Dornish army to the walls of Old Town, razing the fields and villages outside of it. In response, Queen Visenya Targaryen retaliated by burning Starfall with her dragon. In 47 AC, Lady Clarice Dayne was suggested as a potential wife for King Maegor Targaryen. Grand Maester Bennifer wanted to detach Starfall from Dorne, which was then still independent from the Seven Kingdoms. So in other words, separate Starfall and the territory around it from Dorne, thereby weakening Dorne. Ulrich Dayne, a Sword of the Morning, was considered an exceptional knight by Sir Eustace Osprey, comparable as a swordsman to Daemon I Blackfire and Prince Aemon the Dragon Knight. Diana Dayne, who died before her husband became King Maekar I Targaryen, was the mother of Maester Aemon and King Aegon V Targaryen. So as you can see, the Danes have got some serious background and history with some of the most powerful people in Westeros. Recent history, and this is also important. I'm going to jump down a few here because I want to get down to Harrenhal. Now, before I do that, Arthur Dayne was the Sword of the Morning and a part of the King's Guard under Aerys II, the Mad King Targaryen. He was the one that faced off against Eddard Stark at the Tower when Eddard was trying to save his sister. Arthur Dayne, whom plays into our story as Gerold, which I'll get to in a moment, was arguably the best swordsman in the world. Gerold is very jealous of this. And so that kind of plays into, in part, why Gerold's personality is the way it is and why we're going to play the way we do with him. Because he absolutely cannot stand being in the shadows of his cousin, Arthur Dayne. And so he wants to get out front and say, no, I'm better than that guy. Right. Anywho, Arthur Dayne actually knighted Jaime Lannister, which I thought that was very interesting. I did not know that fact. At the Great Tourney at Harrenhal, which, if you recall, was kind of the seed that ultimately led to Robert's Rebellion, Ashara danced with Lord John Connington, Eddard Stark, and a member of the King's Guard. And Ashara is the, sister to Arthur Dayne. In the jousting, Arthur lost to Prince Rhaegar, the eventual champion. Sir Barristan Selmy was infatuated with Ashara, and he planned to name her Queen of Love and Beauty if he won the tourney. According to Illyria Dayne, Ashara instead fell in love with Eddard Stark at Harrenhal. In the aftermath of Robert's Rebellion, Arthur died at the Tower of Joy, slain in single combat by Eddard. Afterwards, Lord Stark returned Arthur's famous sword Dawn to Starfall and informed Ashara of her brother's death. Ashara threw herself into the summer sea from the pale stone sword of Starfall, although her body would never be recovered. Many believe Ashara or Starfall's wet nurse Wyla to be the mother of Eddard's bastard Jon Snow. Now let me unpack a couple of those things. First off, Barristan Selmy states that one of his biggest regrets in life was not winning that tourney at Harrenhal. The reason is that he was going to name Ashara as the Queen of Love and Beauty. He believed that had that happened, Prince Rhaegar would have never been able to win over Eddard Stark's sister. Now, is that faulty logic? Perhaps. But it's something to consider, right? Maybe he jousts with Prince Rhaegar and he kills Rhaegar, or he disgraces Rhaegar or something, right? That causes Eddard's sister not to notice Prince Rhaegar. Additionally, that statement about Ashara or her wet nurse being the mother to Jon Snow, the way I understand that is that was the overall, the rumor mill in Westeros. That's not the reality of where George R.R. Martin is going with it. But that's just kind of what people in Westeros think, right? Is that because she was in love with him. Something must have happened. And then you have him, doing this like massive gesture of like personally delivering the sword back to her. There must be something going on between them, right? All right, so that's the kind of recent history of House Dayne. As you can tell, they're a very old house. There's a lot of accolades and prestige associated with the house, and some very deep roots, not just in Dorne, but just in Westeros in general, being able to show that they date back as far back as the First Men. All right, so just a little bit of lore here before we jump over to Gerold. That's actually articulated in the books themselves. In A Clash of Kings. So actually, let's go back to the Game of Thrones book. So while at King's Landing, Lord Eddard Stark, when he's recovering from his fever, I think that was from his broken leg or something, he has a dream involving Arthur at the Tower of Joy. Okay, so that's kind of the first introductory notion of Eddard Stark facing off against Arthur at the tower that his sister is being held captive at. Then you have Bran Stark recalling Arthur, the Sword of the Morning, being the finest knight ever seen by his father. And then in the Storm Sword, Daenerys discusses Arthur with Arstan Whitebeard. She's saying that Viserys had told her that Arthur was the only knight in the realm who was the peer of their brother Rhaegar. Then traveling through the Riverlands, Arya meets the Brotherhood without banners. She learns that Lord Eldrick Dayne accompanied Lord Beric in his mission to bring Sir Gregor Clegane to justice. Edric is, in our current playthrough, I believe our nephew, I think. When their band was ambushed at the Mummers Ford, Beric was killed, so on and so forth. But again, you have Dayne being involved in the Iron Throne's work, like going out on behalf of the Iron Throne to carry out, the requests from the Iron Throne itself. You have Jaime Lannister recalling Arthur with great respect. Then in Feast of Crows, which is where Gerold enters the picture, which is I'm going to pivot to next. So with that, now that we have some good background about House Dayne, let's pivot over to Gerold. Okay, Gerold Dayne, otherwise known as Darkstar. He's a handsome, clean-shaven man with high cheekbones, a strong jawline, an aquiline nose, and dark purple eyes. He has thick silver hair with a singular black streak in it, which reaches down to his lower neck. Sword of the Evening. Gerold Dayne was born into House Dayne between the years 170 and 174 AC, during the reign of King Aerys II Targaryen. His eldest cousin, Sir Arthur Dayne, served as the Sword of the Morning and the deadliest member of King Aerys' Kingsguard. Gerold was deeply jealous of his cousin, who was widely considered the greatest fighter in the Seven Kingdoms. Gerold trained in the use of the blade and was eventually named a Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. Sir Gerold was a lover of Princess Arianne of Martell, the daughter and heir of the Dorne's ruler, Doran Martell. Now, I wouldn't pay too much to this because she slept with everybody, but still it's notable, right, that he's at least has some connection with the Martell ruling family. Now, in Feast of Crows, Darkstar allies himself with Princess Arianne Martell during her secret attempt to crown Princess Myrcella Baratheon as the new queen of the Seven Kingdoms, using her betrothal with Tristan Martell and the Dornish law where the eldest child inherits, male or female. The idea is to put Myrcella and Tommen and their supporters against each other. Arianna, who thinks her father hates her and wants her brother Quentyn to rule Dorne, and is also unaware of his real plans, hopes the Dornishmen will rise up to defend her claim for a chance for war against the Lannisters. During their travels into the desert on their way to Hellholt, they get ambushed by Areo Hota at the River Greenblood, who ordered them to surrender in the name of Prince Doran Martell. While Kingsguard Sir Ares Oakhart rode to his death, Sir Gerold attempted to kill Marcella for reasons not quite yet known, but failed as Marcella's horse ran away. Apparently, he still managed to only slice off her ear and scar her face. He escaped capture, and now he's basically a wanted man later on in the books as a result of that. And so it's unclear why he kind of double-crossed the Martells, but it probably wasn't the best idea. And yeah, so that's kind of the best that you really know about Gerold. Here he is right here. Not a whole lot of information about him. I think the most important things about him that we need to know is his family history, that he's a deeply jealous man of Arthur Dayne, and likely is a very proud person, right? He's like, I am a Dane. You know, I'm one of the, I have a lineage dating back to the first men. I am important. You will see me as important. And if you don't see me as important, I will make you see me as important, right? That's, I think, the personality type that we have there. Okay, let's pivot over to our playthrough. Okay, so hopefully you found that informative and interesting. I did. I thought it was really cool to kind of learn about House Dayne and learn about the character we're going to play as, and then it makes a lot more sense. And now I feel like I have a really good grasp of how to kind of role play House Dayne, and in particular, Gerold Darkstar. So here he is. He's got 19 martial, so very good martial. He's a dutiful commander, so he's not a, like a phenomenal commander, but he's very good. He's attractive, which is going to help with diplomacy a little bit, even though his diplomacy is only 3. He's inspired a leader. He's a skilled fighter, so decent for dueling. A knight, wroth, cruel, brave, and ruthless. So obviously ruthless, cruel, and wroth aren't going to be doing us any favors with other people under us. So just a little bit with the house family tree here real quick. So we've got a brother who has 2 kids, Aegon and Elisane, and then we have a sister, Elise. And then our father had a brother who's, both of them are passed away. But Beric, our uncle Beric, he was the one that had our notorious, we think notorious cousin Arthur, who died to Eddard Stark. And then a sister who committed suicide as a result of her dead brother. And interestingly, she's still alive. Where the heck is she at? Oh, wow. Okay. Oh, I see. Interesting. Okay. So I didn't realize we had a dynasty up there. So that's the family tree. Now, okay, so the playthrough, kind of the plan here. So the first plan is obviously to get the High Lordship. So we want to get it from our nephew here, who's running things. He's only 9. Not the the most amazing stats. I think we could hopefully make ourselves regent, and then from there make him disappear forever. He'll become High Lord of the Torrentine. So that'd be step 1. At that point, I'm just going to need to just fabricate claims and try and expand as best I can. I don't know if I'm going to be able to either claim Dorne or become independent in this guy's lifetime. That'll be a bit of a lift because we're going from like 1 High Lordship to the entire Paramount. And I just don't know if we can get there, but we're going to try. Once we have expanded sufficiently to either get independence or we have a firm foothold over our territory or we take Dorne, I do want to switch our religion over to the old gods. Here's why. Because as you heard from the history, our ancestry goes all the way back to the first men, right? And if we're saying, hey, we, House Dayne, are the rightful rulers to Dorne, that is in part because of our lineage and ancestry back to the first men, right? Who worshipped the old gods. So I think it goes part and parcel. I think if we're saying, hey, we have a claim to Dorne because of our ancient ancestry, I think we owe it, it's just to be, you know, consistent. Then I think we say, you know what, then we also should worship the old gods because that is our true lineage of House Dayne. And that's what differentiates us from House Martell. Because if you recall, it was a Dane who, for whatever reason, gave up the throne willingly to the Martells. And ever since then, the Martells have ruled Dorne, right? So I think us being of the old gods separates us from Martell, and it shows the rest of Dorne, here's why we are the rightful rulers of Dorne. Here's why you should support us. Here's why we will be the rulers of Dorne. And then when we do that, we're going to set up the kingdom of Torrentine, and we're going to put it over here as our capital. Because we are stone Dornish. We are not salt Dornish. We are sand Dornish. We belong over here. Not to mention the fact that Dorne, the kingdom of Dorne, started over here, and it was only moved over to the salt Dorne areas when Martell took over. Now, once that's all done, all taken care of, I'm going to go after Old Town, knock that out, take that from the reach, and then begin just carving up the reach until we can completely overthrow it. Obviously trying to convert as much as we can here as well to the old gods, but the objective being having 2 Paramounts along with hopefully 1 or 2 more alliances that we then can use to leverage taking the throne itself. Now, the reason I want to take Old Town is this one province alone here in Old Town, it's worth 91. To put that in perspective, that's this entire lordship, High Lordship combined. Like 25, 40, so it's at 65, 90. So that's 1. So Old Town is a very powerful, large High Lordship to control. And what would be beautiful with that is you control the Torrentine and that High Lordship as your 2. That's very, very powerful position to have yourself going forward, ruling. So that's the overall strategic picture of how I plan to play the game. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and get all this stuff sorted out, take care of all that offline. In the next video, I'll explain very briefly what I did to get everything set up, and we will jump into the game. Before I go, if you found this video informative, interesting, helpful, please like and subscribe. My brother and I, obviously, we don't really make any money at all on this channel. We just do this for fun, but we also do it because we like having the community and building the community and sharing things with people who have similar interests as we do. And so please provide comments to these videos. What would you do? What would you like to see? Would you find interesting? Just really anything. Or really any kind of lore from Game of Thrones that you thought was cool that you want to throw in here, please do. Or if you have any speculation as to who Gerold Darkstar might really be, or what his story arc might be in the books, please include those. And with that, I will see you guys in the next video.